You should be sitting here. Very good looking group.
Okay, Dr. Jamil just stole my line. I was just going to do that. Now I have no opening for icebreaker to start with. But thank you all for coming to this event. My name is Aziz Abu Sara. I'm the co-executive director of the Center for World Relations, Diplomacy and Conflict Resolution, which is a center that organized this event. And we are happy to see you here, to see His Excellency Dr. Ma'ana Al-Qatar, Ambassador from Palestine, which we can say that now after the UN vote. And Dr. Jamil Shami will introduce in a minute, but I want to take just a couple minutes first to introduce you to the center, which is here in George Mason. The Center for World Relations, Diplomacy and Conflict Resolution, which is really long, and I didn't come up with the name, I joined after they named it, so that's not my fault. It's, you can always use the acronym, which is CRDC. Has been doing a lot of work in Palestine for a while. I actually came back from Jerusalem just a few days ago, and I was there on a trip where we were able to take some business people from the States to meet with Palestinians in the West Bank. We were able to meet with some officials and people who could be investors in the Palestinian economy. CRDC is innovating a whole new idea of how to work in conflict resolution. That it's not only about dialogue, it's not only about diplomacy, but it's also about economy. It's also about how to reach out, how to help the middle class, the indigenous people. And so we had actually a meeting, for example, with Prime Minister Fayyad, which His Excellency helped us to arrange. So this is one of the things we are doing in Palestine, but CRDC has quite a lot of programs there. One of them, if you haven't heard yet, we're running a class this January where students from Mason and outside Mason, so anybody here, even if you're not a student, you could join. Yeah, it's a fun class. We've been running it already for a few years. Dr. Mark Gopin, who's the head of the center, is going to be teaching it in Jerusalem, and we'll be going all across the West Bank and Palestine and Israel. So I definitely invite you to join us to that class. Another thing that our center has been working on is executive trainings on business and conflict and on cultural issues, religion, interfaith, and we have been doing a lot of work both in Palestine and other places. And I want to also thank everybody who helped put this event together, the many volunteers from CRDC and George Mason University who worked tirelessly to do this. And perhaps what's amazing about our center is when we talk about peace in the Middle East and the Arab-Jewish relations there, is today we were joking in our center. I was talking to Mark, who's also a rabbi, or Scott, and we have a Syrian, I'm Palestinian, we have Jews, we have Americans also. Couldn't get rid of those. But we have such a mixed group, and we're getting along quite well with each other that we're trying to model, I guess, what we're trying to teach here. When we talk about conflict resolution, if we can't get along within our center, how could we talk about it with somebody else? But that's exactly what we're doing, saying if we can do it, we can work together, then we can go to other places, and we're doing work at the moment in Syria and Turkey and Iran and many of those countries. We have to take what we're able to model in our school, not just teach it, but actually live it, actually experience it. And we take our students to these places. I say in Palestine we'll be going in January, and then later we'll be going March to Turkey and doing a class on the Syrian border and be talking about Syria. And then there are other classes in the summer going to, I believe we're going to the Balkans this year, and Indonesia again this year, and we're looking at other places. And the final thing, since we have you already all here, if you ever want to help and you find your free time, we always look for interns. So please talk to us or talk to the people who saw the registration outside to do that if you're interested in helping out with CRDC. But today we are here to listen to the ambassador, and before I want to introduce our moderator, Dr. Jamil Shami. When I asked him, how do you want me, and I know the Shami family, some of you might his nephew said Asghar did his master's here, and I asked him, how do you want me to introduce you? And he said, well, citizen of the world, but the heart of a Palestinian. So this is the introduction of Dr. Shami, but he's also credited as the founder of the Arab American Republicans here, and he's a great friend and a great friend to CRC and to us as well. So, Dr. Shami.
Thank you, Aziz, very much. It's a double pleasure to face you, to relate my relationship to George Mason and to introduce the Palestinian ambassador to you. I have 4 children. All my children graduated from George Mason University, so it's our university. My nephew Ahmed received his master in the last graduation, so pleasure to be with you. The administration of George Mason University contacted me and received me and tried to help them connect with certain Arab countries, including the Gulf, including Saudi. And I have been partially responsible for bringing in many hundreds of Arab students to George Mason, believing it is a good place and a good university and good to be with you. It is a pleasure to introduce our ambassador, where relationship with him and his family is a family involvement for us. To begin with, what he is Ma'an Rashid Ariqat. And the Arab names have meaning. It's to my advantage to share that concept with you, because my name is Jamil and it means handsome. Ma'an is the source of basically water or other things that never dries out, continuously giving. Rashid is wise and sage. Ariqat from Ariq, genuine, veteran, authentic. So we have the 3 qualities in the name of our ambassador. Our ambassador was given the title of ambassador in his mid-career, before he became an ambassador, because such was his role in the negotiation. All names that are associated with the negotiations between Palestinians and Israelis, such as the Y River, Taba, Madrid, Gaza crossings, Orient House, are all stations and stages of his life as he was part of the negotiation. So for us, coming to know something about the conflict through education, we definitely have the right speaker. Part of his preparation, he went to Arizona State, Western International, and went to Harvard for leadership courses and offerings. In the last conflict of Gaza, he was a frequent guest on CNN, and he provided the summary, the gist, and he mastered the science, if not the art, of summarizing things succinctly. Proud of his friendship, proud that I can call him my ambassador. He's an ambassador not for Palestine and the Palestinians there, but he's true ambassador for the Palestinian community here. His home is home for the community. He continuously seeking to know in what way he can be of help for any Palestinians. So to me, he's ambassador of ambassadors. And I'm very glad that he is here, that you are here. I give you Ambassador Ma'an Rashid Ariqat.
Thank you very much, Dr. Shami, for the kind words. I think it makes it more difficult for me now to speak after such an introduction, but I stand here before you today in a different capacity than I did just a week ago. And the recent UN, well, let me first of all thank George Mason for inviting me, Aziz, the Center for World Religions, Democracy and Conflict Resolution. I don't know how you managed to put all these together, but somehow you did. And Dr. Gopin, and you for coming tonight to listen to me. Going back to what I wanted to say, last week's vote at the United Nations General Assembly was not only a symbolic vote, an empty vote, unfortunately, like many in this country and elsewhere try to portray it. On the contrary, it was an historic vote for the Palestinian people, because it came exactly 65 years after the same international body approved the partition of Palestine into two states, one Jewish and one Arab. It's not a secret that we rejected the partition plan in 1947, and we don't deny it. At the time, the Jewish ownership of the land was much less than 20%. And for the United Nations to grant the newly born state of Israel 55%, and the indigenous population of the land 45%, at the time we felt it was not a fair partition. And therefore, while we today say we should have accepted the partition plan at the time, I can myself understand why my grandparents and my parents at the time rejected that unfair partition. But we have come a long way since 1947. And we have come a long way from totally rejecting the existence of the State of Israel to accepting the existence of the State of Israel. We have done that many times in very unequivocal terms. We did it in 1993, actually in 1988, when the Palestine National Council for the first time accepted United Nations Resolutions 242 and 338, which explicitly recognized Israel's right to exist. And the Palestinian leadership, the PLO in 1988, presented what we described at the time as being the historic compromise, accepting a Palestinian state on the West Bank, Gaza Strip, and East Jerusalem, 22% of what used to be historic Palestine. And we said, for the sake of ending this bloody conflict, we are Palestinians, the original owners of the land, are willing to accept a state on 22% of the land. Then in 1993, when we exchanged the letter of mutual recognition with Israel, we once again recognized recognized Israel's right to exist. And we did that on two other occasions. In 1996, when the Palestine National Council met in a special session to delete all the clauses in our national charter that called for the destruction of the State of Israel. In 1998, after the Wye River negotiations that were held here, and upon the request of the same Prime Minister who is the Prime Minister of Israel today, Benjamin Netanyahu, he asked President Clinton to ask the Palestinian leadership to convene again in order to reiterate our decision of 1996 to delete the clauses that called for the destruction of the State of Israel. And we did a special session in the Gaza Strip that President Clinton attended at the time. And we once again said clearly, unequivocally, that we are not aiming at the destruction of the State of Israel. Unfortunately, all these unequivocal recognitions were met by more Israeli hardline positions and policies. Israel, after we declared that we are willing to have a state on 22% of what used to be historic Palestine, embarked on a practical process and a political process to bargain with us on the 22%. And they started to confiscate more land, build more settlements, build walls, and impose fait accompli policies that are today not only threatening the two-state solution, but actually killing the two-state solution. I was reading an article on the way here. Somebody described the two-state solution as dream pipe or pipe dream. I'm sorry, pipe dream. It's a new expression to me, and I was thinking about it because I was asked today in a meeting, do you still believe in the two-state solution? I mean, do you have faith that it will happen one day? Now, I get divided or I get confused when they ask me a question like that, because what I see on the ground tells me that Israel is not serious, it's not genuine about reaching a peaceful conclusion to the conflict with the Palestinian people. Someone who wants to have peace with you, don't embark on a settlement project that is swallowing the very same land that will be ours supposedly in any future agreement. And they will not continue to impose facts on the ground to preempt, prejudge, prejudice the outcome of final status negotiations between Palestinians and Israelis. And for many of you, or some of you who have been there and saw the magnitude of this settlement project, you can also reach the same conclusion, that there is no way there will be a Palestinian state with walls, settlements, facts on the ground. And the most recent announcement that they will implement the E1 plan, which means East 1, E is an abbreviation for East, a settlement project that, if it is to be implemented, will physically sever the north and west bank from the southern part of the West Bank. So there will be no Palestinian state. And this is on one side, on one aspect of the question. The other aspect is you have to remain hopeful and optimistic. Because what is the alternative of not having a two-state solution? It's either continued conflict, violence, bloodshed, until one of the parties prevail over the other. Today, the balance of power is in favor of Israel. They have the upper hand. They have the strongest military in the Middle East. And the Palestinians are no match militarily to the Israelis. Although the recent conflict that took place in the Gaza Strip 2 weeks ago proved that Israel today is much less safer than they were 10 and 15 years ago. And that Israel in 5 years from now or 4 years from now, I can assure you, will be less safer than what it is today. Because if you want to rely on the logic of power instead of the power of logic, there is no way that you can maintain your supremacy. And you can look at history about empires and countries who dominated vast areas using their military might to see them collapse suddenly, disintegrate suddenly. So I remain hopeful that we can still salvage the two-state solution, because it is the only way out of this current conflict. And that's why we did go to the United Nations last week. We didn't go to the United Nations, like President Abbas said, to delegitimize a state that is a member of the United Nations, recognized by more than 120, 130 countries, which is Israel. Instead, we went to the United Nations to legitimize a state that must be created, and that is the state of Palestine. Sometimes you hear people say, this is not the time. If this is not the time, then when is the time to do it? How much longer do we have to wait until the United States understands, and Israel understands, that without the creation of a viable, sovereign, contiguous Palestinian state, there will be no peace and security in the Middle East? How many wars do we need to enter? How many lives must be lost before Israeli leaders understand that their security can only be, and security of their people can only be guaranteed if they ended their conflict with the Palestinian people, with the Arabs, and reach peace with their neighbors? So we went to the United Nations to salvage the two-state solution. And we didn't go to the United Nations to abandon negotiations. On the contrary, we Palestinians have so much to gain from reaching peace with Israel, because we are the ones who are paying the heaviest price for the lack of peace. It's not the Israelis, it's the Palestinians, who for the last 47 years have been under a brutal military occupation that undermined our progress in every aspect of our lives. Until today, we have to go through checkposts and are stopped, our IDs checked, humiliated, assaulted, denied our basic freedoms and our human rights. So, without ending the Israeli military occupation and establishing a Palestinian state, there will be no peace in the Middle East. It's a simple equation. And the sooner the Israelis understand that equation and how simple it is, the better off everybody will be in the Middle East and in the world. So, we are looking ahead. I have been meeting with members of Congress over the last 3 days, and I told one of them who was pro-Israel, I said, hey, there's not much you can do about the vote now. It's already registered at the UN. They have passed it. If you want to retaliate, if you want to punish us, if you want to cut off aid, if you want to close down my office, please be my guest. You can do it. I can't stop you. But you are not going to be able to reverse it. It is a fact. And you better deal with this fact in a positive manner. Let's think forward. Let's think ahead. we cannot punish the Palestinians for going to the United Nations. That's hypocrisy, double standard. The United States go to the United Nations. Every once in a while they go to get authorization to attack another country or send troops to another country. And why can't they do that for military interventions and occupying other countries, and we cannot do it to defend the right of our people and seek an end to the military occupation and establish our own state? Why do they call it unilateral when we go seek the support of 193 countries? Is that how they reward the Palestinians for resorting to non-violent political and diplomatic means to further their political objectives? And a country like Israel, which on daily basis is embarking on illegal settlements, confiscation of land, humiliation of the Palestinian people, violating their human rights, violating international law, and they can go unpunished. Not even a word from Congress, not even a strong word from the administration here to try to deter Israel and to make them stop all these illegal activities. So I think that we have an excellent opportunity to move forward if we manage to capitalize on it. But we cannot just return to negotiations for the sake of negotiations. We cannot enter a process that is endless. We started this process in 1993. Next year, it will be 20 years since the Oslo Accords were signed between the PLO and Israel. And I remember that day very, very well, September 13th, 1993. It was meant to end in establishing a Palestinian state in 1999. And we are now 13 years behind. We need to go back to genuine, meaningful negotiations based on clear terms of reference. For us, the clear terms of reference are an end to the Israeli military occupation and the establishment of a Palestinian state, sovereign, independent, that can live side by side in peace and security with Israel. We have the courage to say that. The Israeli leaders have no courage to say that they want to see a Palestinian state living side by side in peace and security with Israel. We are the occupied who are saying that, saying to the occupiers, we acknowledge your right to exist. When there will be a leader on the Israeli side who will come out clearly and say, I am supporting the right of the Palestinian people to live in peace and security side by side with the state of Israel. And we will not abandon that because this is a strategic option for us. It's not tactical. We believe that the two-state solution could still be salvaged. But the alternative, other than continuation of the blood and the violence, is to go for the one-state solution. And I can tell you that many, on both sides today, Israelis and Palestinians, are talking about the one-state solution, where Arabs, Israelis, Jews, Muslims, Christians can all live in peace in one state. As a matter of fact, that was our political platform in the 70s. The PLO called for a secular, democratic Palestine where Jews, Christians, and Muslims can all live in peace in one country. But in order to preserve the national identities of the two peoples, Israelis and Palestinians, we, the PLO, will continue to believe that the two-state solution is the most ideal solution for this conflict. Time is running out, unfortunately. The current Israeli government does not have on its agenda any plans in the near future to engage the Palestinians. They think they can maintain the status quo forever, and they believe that as long as there is no price to be paid for the continued military occupation that they can really keep this conflict open for a long period of time. Of course, they are wrong, and the changing Middle East is going to create different conditions for everybody and make things much more difficult for everybody if we do not accelerate our search for a peaceful resolution to the conflict in the Middle East. I remain hopeful because it's, I think, one of the characters of negotiators and politicians to remain hopeful, otherwise they'll lose their jobs. And I think that, I hope that we will find a partner in Israel that will understand that prolonging the conflict is not going to be in the interest of neither Palestinians nor Israelis. And the best way is to really work hard to start meaningful, genuine negotiations based on clear terms of reference to put an end to this conflict once and for all. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ambassador Arikat. Questions are welcome. You are here because you are interested in the subject. As moderator, I will stay away until the question becomes longer than a question and the comment is longer than a comment. So please, the microphone is there, and I will not interfere unless the guidelines are violated, and speak directly to the ambassador. Please.
If you want to ask a question, please come here and stand online. Sorry, because we can't pass the microphone over. So
We'll take 3 questions at a time. Does that work?
That would be fine. 3 questions at a time.
Fadi.
Leila Alper, Ambassador Arikat, thank you for being here. My question concerns 2 factors. One, as a practical matter, I know the map of the Middle East, you mentioned the Palestinians are being offered 20% of land, and the West Bank that includes no ocean access. So I just wanted to ask, on practical terms, in peace, how do Palestinians feel about accepting a state where if you're in Bethlehem in the West Bank, you can't drive to the ocean, but
We don't have an ocean, we have a sea.
it's the Mediterranean.
Yeah.
But in 1947, your grandparents, so just as a practical matter, how do they today feel about that deal? And secondly, a second question is, you said that the option to not develop a 2-state solution is more conflict, and that, of course, implies violence against Israel as much as it implies an Israeli violent response. And as I've seen the news, this can go on until Israel pulverizes the entire Gaza Strip and the entire West Bank. And to what extent could the Palestinian Authority and you as ambassador change the argument to be that the reason for Israel to explore a 2-state solution and implement it is not because they want to avoid violence in their cities or streets, but because they want to legitimize the creation of their state as a people that flee violence and develop agriculture and develop technology, and their occupation denies that for Palestinians. And the incentive for the Israelis to support a state is to really come full circle and legitimize their state by providing that security for agricultural production, technology development, the practice of...
Thank you very much. Please let us limit it to 1 question. Second person, please.
Hi, Ambassador. Thank you for your talk. I've heard a lot about E1 recently, but I believe in previous negotiations, Israel has promised Colombia Airport to the Palestinians as their airport, and after the destruction of the Yasser Arafat Airport in Gaza, that would be the only airport. I'm told that the Atarot terminal right next to Colombia Airport is being expanded, and it's going to wipe out the airport. And that will leave the Palestinians with no airport for a future state. I'd like to know, first of all, whether it's true that the airport was promised, whether at Oslo or in Camp David, to the Palestinians. Number two, whether it's true that Atador's terminal is being expanded, and whether that's been discussed at all with the Palestinian leadership and the negotiating affairs departments. Thanks.
Students. Yeah. طلاب معلش على السؤال الثاني. عن كلام بس.
Thank you, Mr. Ambassador. I am a member of a Jewish organization called J Street, which I'm sure you've heard of, and which has as its motto, we're pro-Israel and pro-Palestine. And it, like you, is calling now on after the resolution of statehood for calling for negotiations, for asking the U.S. government to proceed swiftly to do its best to achieve them. But what occurs to me is that there's been, at least in a great deal of thinking about this problem, a difference between Gaza, which is politically ruled by Hamas, and the Palestinian Authority control of the West Bank. The West Bank has been a very quiet area in terms of security for the Israeli government, but Gaza has been a very unstable and dangerous area. Now that there is a Palestinian state, you are, I take it, the ambassador from the West Bank and Gaza, and therefore the issue of how your government can deal with these issues becomes, I think, paramount to any solution of a two-state nature. Thank you.
Okay, so take three at a time.
Okay. Thank you for all your questions. Let me start. Can I start backward? Of course, we know what J Street is, and I mean, I have the honor and the pleasure to work with J Street. I take part in their activities. I meet with their members. I speak to their directors and to their president. Jeremy Ben-Ami is a good friend of mine. You are pro-Palestinian, you are pro-Israeli, you are pro-peace. That's what you are. So we don't ask people to be pro-Palestinian or pro-Israeli. We ask people to be pro-peace, pro-justice. And I think what J Street is trying to do is try to counter the influence of, I would say, the outdated American Jewish organizations that exist today, who are not trying to understand, grasp what is going on in the Middle East and how much of an impact that could have on the future of Israel. They continue to stick to old slogans and old policies, and in their blind support for whatever Israel does, they are really hurting Israel. So J Street presents a much more balanced approach and perspective on the conflict. And in the past, they have taken positions against us. When we went to the United Nations last year, they issued a statement telling the United States to veto our attempt at the United Nations. And I was supposed to speak at J Street the day after. So they called us and they were nervous, we want to send you the statement, but I hope that the ambassador will continue will be coming tomorrow. And my assistant came rushing to my office and said, yeah. I said, what's the deal? So they are issuing a statement, saying that they support any veto by the United States against our bid at the UN. That was September 2011, when we sought the United Nations Security Council for a full member state, not a non-member state. And they want to know if you are going. I said, absolutely. I mean, it doesn't mean that we see eye to eye with them on every issue, but we very much believe in the good work that they are doing among the American Jewish community here, and I think they should continue. Now, to your question on the Hamas and Gaza, it's a fact that politically we are divided, but this does not mean that the people are divided. And what the kind of unity that the Palestinians have shown during the assault on the Gaza Strip 2 weeks ago. And I was asked that question many times on many media appearances, Gaza, Fatah, Hamas. I said, hey, there are people being killed here. Our people are being slaughtered, innocent civilians are being killed on daily basis. Neighborhoods are being destroyed, entire families are being killed. And you are telling me about political divisions? So we continue to work to end these divisions, and I think this is going to be the next step that we will be taking after the United Nations. There will be a serious effort made to reach real reconciliation and to try to end this unfortunate division, political division between the PLO and Hamas. I cannot predict what the outcome will be, because in the past we were hopeful, optimistic, and nothing happened. But it definitely can impact our future position in terms of negotiations with Israel if we were more united than what we are today. On the issue of the airport, the gentleman who asked that must be from that area. Where is he?
I'm not in that area, but I just was in that area. I had some meetings.
Okay, because you mentioned Atarot, and this is something that, unless you are there or you have been there, you wouldn't know what Atarot is. The Qalandia airport used to be an airport when Jordan ruled the West Bank. It was actually the only airport at the time before an airport was established in Amman, the Jordanian capital. But you know that we built an airport in Gaza, and Israel destroyed the airport in 2000. We talked recently about building an airport in the Jericho area because there is enough space there. But to be honest with you, I don't think that we are at that stage yet of discussing whether we can open the airport in Qalandia or build a new airport. I think that has to wait until we are engaged in a serious political discussion with the Israeli side. Eventually, we have to have an airport somehow there, and the port in Gaza that was also destroyed in 2000 by the Israeli army. But all these issues are going to be discussed as part of the permanent solution between us and the Israelis. But right now it's premature to think about having an airport when the political situation is not resolved yet. On the issue of access, I think if I understood it right, how would Palestinians have, where is the gentleman who asked me that question? How would the Palestinians have access? The Gaza Strip on one side, the West Bank is on another. Part of the interim agreement that we signed with Israel in 1993 called for the establishment of a safe passage between the West Bank and the Gaza Strip. Unfortunately, Israel did not open that safe passage until 1996, 3 years after we signed the Oslo Accords with them in 1993. And even when they opened it, it was limited. Not every Palestinian managed to use it, and commuting back and forth from the West Bank and Gaza Strip was very much limited. But we have done so many studies on what is the best way to link the West Bank and the Gaza Strip, from a sunken road to an overpass to a tunnel, and there are an abundance of studies on how to physically link the two flanks of any future Palestinian state that will give Palestinians in the West Bank the access to the Mediterranean and the Gaza Strip. Right now, what we are fighting for is to have access to cities and villages in the West Bank. The Israelis have been imposing a very harsh closure regime. They have relaxed it significantly recently, I have to admit, but they can impose it at will, anytime. They have checkposts that are empty right now, but if the commander in that area orders his soldiers to activate that checkpost, they can do it in few minutes and seal off large parts of the West Bank from each other. And we suffered very much from that in 2000, from 2000 to 2007 when the Israelis really imposed a very strict closure regime. So the access and freedom of movement is an integral part of any future agreement with Israelis.
Since you are standing there, four of you, please, four of you, give your questions.
Mr. Ambassador, I had the opportunity to visit Israel and the West Bank, and so I toured the conflict sites and I walked the streets of Ramallah 2 years ago. So I was deeply alarmed by the report about E1, and I do see that as, hopefully it's a threat. Hopefully, they're going to back down, whether through some electoral process after they get the result they want in the election or whatever. But I don't have a lot of hope if it goes beyond zoning and that sort of thing. On the other hand, I have to ask you, because the story of the first half of the 20th century was that the Jewish national movement was very successful, and I think their success has gone down over time because they have not sought to essentially solidify and take the success that they had and go with it. So my question to you is, why does it seem like the Palestinian national movement is always reacting to the Jewish national movement? Why don't we hear more about Palestinians in the West Bank having community meetings, discussing their agenda, mobilizing themselves and communicating with the world in a way that allows us to change this perception that all Palestinians are terrorists? Because this is the problem that we have in the United States, and I don't think it's going to change from the United States. The United States is pro-Israel. It doesn't have the same tradition that Europe has. It has a different history, and so the perception has to change of how Americans see Israel. And politically, frankly, J Street is not going to fill this muscle without more cooperation from the other side, because they have the Congress in lockdown. And President Obama can't do anything when he has such a small amount of support in Congress. That's the reality. So I think both sides have to challenge themselves, I guess is what I'm saying.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ambassador. Before I ask my question, I just want to wish you good luck in your endeavor to establish a real Palestinian state and to achieve peace for both Israelis and Palestinians. And just say that almost 100 years ago, my grandparents fled and occupied Ireland, occupied by the British military, and it's a very long conflict. And the way I look at it, you guys are ahead of the curve and maybe solving things before we were able to. So good luck to you with that. But my question specifically is about Hamas and how whenever Israeli officials or advocates for Israel are asked, why are you not being more proactive in helping the Palestinians establish a state, the first thing they say is either A, Hamas doesn't recognize Israel's right to exist, or B, the Palestinians, conflating Hamas and Fatah, doesn't recognize Israel's right to exist. In your interactions with Hamas, what is your approach in terms of discussing that issue? Do you suggest to them that their refusal to change that position is arming extremists on the Israeli side with being able to not move forward in the peace process, and that actually undermines, and obviously you guys are competing movements, but that undermines your side's goal of trying to have serious negotiations and bring serious pressure to bear on the Israelis? Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Since the vote last week, there have been articles both in the newspaper and online that your government may possibly petition the International Criminal Court to file war crimes charges against the Israelis. If your government were to do that, are you prepared for the U.S. and Israeli reaction, some of which you mentioned at the end of your speech, having your office closed down, you being escorted out of the country, the cutting off of aid to the Palestinians, the Israeli government stopping, well, this I think they may have already did, holding off the tax monies that they collect. I guess, is the Palestinian government considering that? And two, if you are you willing to face consequences?
Mr. Ambassador, thank you for coming. Two questions. One, and I've kind of always wondered about this for years, and the question was, why is it that there is so much controversy about what's right or what's wrong? I mean, at the end of the day, justice is clear from falsehood. And this seems to be one of the conflicts where it's like you can't really make up your mind, and everyone's saying one thing and then the other is saying, the next thing. So, in your opinion, why do you think that it's that difficult? I mean, at the end of the day, you know what's right, you know what's wrong. I mean, I'm just kind of simplifying it, but you get the point. Second thing, you talk about, okay, peace, a two-state solution. And, everyone says, well, they started it, he started it, it's like a school playground. But in your opinion, who is the committer of original sin? That's for lack of a better term. Like, where is this? I mean, there's always a start point. You know what I mean? So, in your opinion, where did that happen? How did it happen?
One more question. Take it.
Yeah.
Thank you. I want to know, what do you think about Iran-Hamas relation, and if that has any impact on Fatah-Hamas divisions politically and the Palestine problem?
Gaddafi says you're Iranian, huh? You see, this is one of the advantages that we have. We can tell, from the English, where we come from. It's easy. So we can never disguise ourselves. Okay. On the Jewish national movement question and the Palestinian, and the fact that we only reacting to what basically Israel does, and we don't take the initiative. I think we are trying to learn. I mean, after all, the conflict that we have there, we have it with our cousins, supposedly, and we are learning from them. In so many areas, they at one point, and this is an admission that I make clearly, they have suffered and they were persecuted, and what happened to them was so incomprehensible, but for us, we show sympathy with that, but we say, it wasn't us who caused that. I mean, whoever inflicted that persecution and suffering were not even Orientals or Easterners. They were Westerners. So why should we, the Palestinians, who, when I listen to what my mother used to tell me the stories when she lived in Jerusalem about how they lived together in peace and harmony, and how they started, the Jewish immigrants started to come to Palestine. My grandfather was a partner with a Jew in a bakery shop. That's a fact. I'm not making this story up. And when he left in 1948 and moved to Jericho, my hometown, he left everything behind. He had a chance to meet his partner in 1967 after Israel occupied the West Bank. His partner sought him out and managed to meet him. And they left their home there. They left everything there. So, we show understanding, but at the same time we ask, why should we be the ones who are paying the price for what happened? Why do we have to suffer exile and humiliation and denial of freedom because somebody inflicted something, something that's really, really horrible on other people and on another nation? And so when we look at them, we sometimes compare our experiences and we try to learn. We try to learn how they managed to endure. They resorted to education, which is, a fact you cannot deny. They are, when I say they are, I'm talking about Jews around the world. They are some of the most highly educated people in the world. And we Palestinians at one point felt that this is the only thing that we have to seek because we lost everything. So that's why you see Palestinians also being considered some of the highest educated people in the world today because of the fact that we lost everything and we focused on education. So I wouldn't say that it's all been a reaction to them. No, we take initiative. Going to the United Nations was an initiative that we took. And it was so many things for a very small population. You are talking about maybe 3.54 million people in the West Bank, the Gaza Strip and East Jerusalem. We are not a very large population there. Around the world there are 11 million Palestinians, but in the to be proactive, and I think what J Street is trying to do is good. Yes, they are not going to be able to change things overnight, but finally we have a credible Jewish voice in this country that is saying we care about Israel, and that's why we support the establishment of the Palestinian state. That is a very wise proposition. And everybody, all Jews in this country should support such an approach, because this approach is going to protect Israel. Not the approach taken by AIPAC and the American Jewish Committee and the ADL. It's not going to protect the interests of Israel in the future. On the second, the Hamas question, when we talk to Hamas, first of all, Hamas is not part of the PLO. Neither Hamas nor the Islamic Jihad are part of the PLO, which I represent. And they have so far refused to be part of the PLO. They have their own political agenda, we have our own political agenda. When we sit with them and they talk about armed struggle and violence, we say, hey guys, we created armed struggle and violence. We created that in 1965. We hijacked planes. At one point, we did things that at the time we thought were important to draw attention to our struggle because nobody was paying attention to us. But after trying that path, we concluded that it's not going to get us anywhere. The Israelis did the same thing. It's not, you don't have only one crazy party there, you have two crazy parties there. And the Israelis kept saying the Palestinians don't exist. Gordon Meir, their prime minister, said in 1971, there is no such thing as Palestinian. And they kept denying the fact that we existed. They used to jail Palestinians for raising the Palestinian flag. 6 months jail for anybody who raises the Palestinian flag. They would never call it a Palestinian flag, they will call it the PLO flag. They will never give it a Palestinian name. And now, it's raised in the Prime Minister Office of Israel when you go and see it. They tried every military mean, every method to make us give up and give in. And it didn't work. They used military might against our people. They killed a lot of Palestinians in order to make us submit, and we refused to submit. So, with Hamas, we try to reason with them. This is not going to take us anywhere. The only way we can defeat Israel is on the table. By using reason, by using logic,
by relying on international law, and by expressing to them that we are also concerned about their interests. So we continue to urge Hamas to adopt a political strategy to resolve the conflict, and I think they have been forthcoming lately. You've heard statements from their leaders that they will recognize a state or accept the state, a Palestinian state in the 1967 borders, and that they are willing to have a long-term truce with Israel. I think eventually Hamas will be transformed. They want to be part of this political equation. They don't want to continue to fight Israel forever. So our advice to them, adopt a political approach. Let's fight Israel politically, because we cannot, and I'm not being a defeatist. At some point, I supported every action we took in the 60s and 70s. But we cannot defeat Israel militarily. And the only way we can defeat them is politically, morally. That's how we can defeat the Israelis. Occupation is immoral. A country that suffered, its people suffered so much, cannot be inflicting the same suffering on other people. It's as simple as that. That's how we can beat them. Not by launching missiles, blowing up people, and Israelis retaliating. That's not the way to do that. On the ICC and the reaction, I mean, by joining the United Nations as a non-member state, it opens up venues for us that were not open in the past. And that includes joining what they call specialized UN agencies, including the International Criminal Court, the ICJ, the International Court of Justice, World Health Organization, and others. And for now, there is no decision on the part of the Palestinian leadership to pursue membership in any of these organizations. We have one recognition. The objective now, as I said in my remarks, to capitalize on what happened last week at the United Nations. To engage the United States, to engage the international community, and hopefully eventually to engage Israel. Because unfortunately, if we cannot engage Israel, we cannot reach peace. So our focus right now is going to be on engagement, capitalizing, and moving forward. But having said that, if Israel continues to test us, pressure us into the corner, and continue with their violations, blatant violations, in a way that are aimed at making our life completely impossible under occupation, we will resort to whatever means and venues to defend ourselves. And keep in mind, it's all political, non-violent, diplomatic. We are not launching missiles, nor are we blowing up people. We are resorting to peaceful and political means to defend our people and the right of our people to stay on our land and oppose Israeli occupation. So it all depends on the Israeli behavior. If they continue, then we have eventually to resort to whatever venues are available to us. Reaction? It's not going to be something new to us. I mean, today, do you consider Congress to be sympathetic to us? No. They talk about aid. The United States this year, how many days left? 25? 26? This year, so far, has not transferred $1 single to the Palestinians. 495 were earmarked for the year 2012. We haven't received a single penny. And they're talking about cutting off aid? It's already cut off. What are they going to cut? They're going to cut of a... So when they talk to us, they say, well, what are you talking about? Makes sense. We don't receive money from the United States. And we manage it. We will manage. But that will not be allowed to be a pressure tool on our people to undermine and sabotage the interest of our people. We will not allow that to happen. So I hope, again, that, those who can reason and who are logical will prevail in the end, in the Congress and in the US administration, because using these measures, punitive measures, have failed in the past and they will fail in the future. Yeah, the gentleman who asked me that, asked me when the original sin started, I think from the days of Adam and Eve. Where is he? But they did when she ate the apple or he ate the apple, I don't know. I mean, she fed him the apple, she tempted him, he got weakened, and it happens until today, Men always beaten for women, and this is the story of our life, But I mean, I don't know. I mean, I don't know how to answer that. You are right. I wish it was a black and white. I wish it was black and white. It used to be that. It used to. Where is the gentleman who asked me the question? You are in the back. I can't see you. I mean, I wish it was as simple as that. I wish it was. There's nothing like absolute justice. I mean, you probably study that. There is nothing like absolute justice. If you come to a Palestinian and tell him about what happened, and if you have the opportunity to drive through neighborhoods that one day used to be Palestinian, and they don't exist anymore in what is called Israel today, and think about the fact that the creation of the State of Israel in 1948, it was not a land without a people for a people without a land. That's not true. That is a false statement. It was a land with people, vibrant people, commerce, culture, movie theaters, railways, ports, airports, roads, tunnels, everything you have. The infrastructure of a state was already there when the State of Israel was created. Yes, of course, they used their skills later to develop what they controlled and turn it into a very modern state, and we have to give them credit for that. We have to give them credit because in a short period of time, they managed. Now, they used the skills of many different immigrants who went to Israel to help build Israel, but they have done an excellent job in turning the State of Israel into a modern state. And that's a fact we have to admit. But if you ask a Palestinian about this, there's no way you can convince him that was right, what happened was right. And you have to understand when Palestinians say, or said at one point, it has to be reversed. We cannot accept that. And that's why we rejected the partition plan. Because we saw our land just slip away, taken away. And therefore, unfortunately, there is no easy solution to this conflict. The two sides have to meet in the middle. And by this historic compromise that we made in 1988 for a state on 22% of the land, we thought that this could be a historic compromise. Unfortunately, the current Israeli leadership doesn't think so. Now, the final one on the Iran. Okay. Let me finish with this one. The Iran, Hamas, Qatar, Hamas. I think Iran can play a constructive role by not interfering in Palestinian affairs and not interfering in the affairs of others. I mean, the Iranian people are great people. I have many Iranian friends. And I think it's a great nation with a great history, culture, and heritage. And the wise thing is to focus on the well-being of the Iranian people. At the same time, I don't believe everything they say about Iran. And I don't think Iran is a warmongering country that wants to pick fights with their neighbors and with Israel and that. I don't believe that either. I think they are a peace-loving country. They want to live in peace. They have their own pride. And therefore, if you ask me as a Palestinian, I think they should use their influence with Palestinian factions and groups to bring the Palestinians together, not apart. Unfortunately, they are not doing that today.
If you do not mind, we have less than 3 minutes for the 3 questions and including the answer. So please be very brief. Go ahead. Out of respect for your standing there.
Thank you. Mahmoud Abbas recently Mahmoud Abbas recently gave an interview, I believe, on Israeli television, saying that essentially that he has a right to go visit his home, what is present day Israel, obviously, but not to live there. Is that an official shift in the PLO's policy that they're willing to give up the right of return?
Thank you. Next.
Domestic politics and the major players in Israel, the upcoming elections in Palestine with the different factions, does not really motivate for a two-state does not motivate them to arrive at a two-state solution right now. At the same time, the timetable to arrive at that is ticking. So what are can you speak to some of the trust-building measures that you can bring to negotiations that would incentivize a two-state solution?
Thank you.
I'm interested to hear about your thoughts on environmental peace building, especially the idea of looking at shared natural resources, especially water, in negotiations moving forward.
Thank you very much.
The first one, a quick answer, no. I mean, there's no change in our position on the right of return. I think the President was reflecting on realities on the ground. We are pragmatic. We said that the solution to the Palestinian refugee problem should be a just resolution based on UN General Assembly Resolution 194 to be agreed. And we made it clear to be agreed with Israel. We didn't mean with China or Japan or India. It has to be agreed with Israel. Our position, Israel has to accept its responsibility for the creation of the Palestinian refugee problem. The mechanisms of solving that problem should be negotiated with Israel. So the President was reflecting on the situation on the ground. The reality is that Safad is no longer there. Safad that he knew in his childhood is not there. But this does not in any way mean that we will abandon discussions, because it is agreed with the Israelis that the right of return and the refugee problem should be discussed in final status negotiations. So it is one issue on the table when and if the negotiations are resumed. So it doesn't indicate a shift in our position on that issue. The domestic politics, that's a very good question. A lot has been damaged over the last few years in terms of trust between Israelis and Palestinians. All these people-to-people projects, the interaction, the exchanges are not happening anymore, unfortunately. Especially in the case of Israel, we are witnessing a drift to the right in Israel. The next Israeli election, I'm afraid, and one of the people who asked me a question here spoke a little about it, is not going to produce a more moderate government than the one that we have right now, unfortunately. I think the pro-settlers elements within the Likud party have won the primaries, and one can only expect that the next Israeli government to be more extreme right than the one it is today. I hope I will be proven wrong, but a lot needs to be done in terms of people to people and creating that trust. And we have to criticize ourselves. The violence that we used during the second uprising Intifada and all these suicide bombings that some Palestinians carried out in Israel somehow destroyed the peace camp in Israel and the advocates of a two-state solution. So we are to be blamed also for destroying certain segments of the Israeli society who advocated for the establishment of a Palestinian state. I hope we can revive that in the near future. On the environment and the water, you are talking about a small piece of land. From my house in my apartment in Ramallah at night, I can see planes taking off and landing in Tel Aviv airport. And I can see lights probably the outskirts of Tel Aviv. So it's a very, very, very small strip of land. So you can imagine that if the Israelis do something in terms of hurting the environment, we will be affected, and vice versa. The issue of water, right now Israel is exploiting water resources to its advantage. The Israelis take our water and sell it to us. Can you believe it? They take it and they sell it to us. And they sell it to us for the same price they sell it to their own citizens, despite the fact that the income per capita there is 10 or 12 times as much. So there is definitely injustice in that area. And in our discussions with them, we called for what we call equal distribution of water resources. Now, in the future, if the number of Israelis is 7-8 million and the number of Palestinians is 5 million, we have to find a formula where, because of the fact that the number of Israelis is much larger, that the Israelis maybe could use more. But today, Israel is using like 20 times as much as water as we are using in the West Bank, using our own resources. So this issue is a final status issue, and it will be discussed once, if and when these negotiations are resumed. Thank you very much.
Thank you for your interest. Thank you for coming. Please join me in thanking Ambassador of Palestine, Man Arifat.